to these things, whatever you're giving your attention to, you're also giving it your energy. So if you're concentrating on listening to EVPs, you're giving whatever these entities are your energy, and they go, oh man, here's a feeding source. Look at, he's even looking to get, it's like a fish that jumps into the boat.
It's fascinating because like the whole movement of awakening that's going on around the world at the moment, there's this kind of struggle between needing to know what's happening and yet not getting sucked into the kind of horror and negativity of understanding how awful, these entities and this negative energy is on the planet. So, needing to understand, be informed, to understand the extent of it, but then somehow transmute that and find your humanity and your courage and your positivity to be able to influence it, so that it's not sucking you into this endless, source of, it wants you there in this state of shock and horror and outrage. You know what I mean? So
exactly.
I think once you've got to overcome that initial shock and that kind of horror, there's a certain sort of, I find a certain sort of immunity to it, because from my perspective, I can practice my spiritual power. I can sit in my spiritual power. I can chant what I chant. I can practice my Buddhism, and I can celebrate what I consider to be my Buddha nature. I can say, wow, look at this power. Look at this. This is wow. This is amazing what I can do with this power that I have in a very positive way. I can use it positively, But there's this kind of in-between moment where you have to go down those rabbit holes. You have to understand the power that we're up against, this kind of incredibly powerful, life-sucking entity,
And it's not just schizophrenics. They're hitting all of us all the time. Sherry, my partner in arm here, she came up with, she calls it the That's a Lie program, which helped her break out. And I've seen that same concept operate with when I was working with schizophrenics. She's just made it very concise and very clear. And she basically says any negative thought you have about yourself or anyone else is inserted into your mind by these entities, hoping to hook you. So they'll throw that in and go, yeah, that guy was a real butt. You ought to lash back at him. So any negative thought, and then you go into the thought stream, and if you look at your thoughts, they're just a big revolving thing, and they end up back where you were. So I don't know how many times while I was struggling with, as an adolescent, I'd get in a lot of trouble, and then I'd be, I'll never do this again. I'll never get in this trouble again. Next thing I know, 6 months later, I'm in the same problem again. It's the same thing over again. And you look at women who marry alcoholics. They have this horrible marriage. They get divorced, and they go, I'm never going to marry another alcoholic again. Next thing you know, they fall in love with this guy. They have no idea he's an alcoholic. And then he starts drinking again. They got another one. So it's like your reality is, especially if you believe that you are your thoughts, the first thing that has to be broken is the knowledge that you are not your thoughts, that they are independent of who you are. You are the awareness of that exists in there. And the first time I was exposed to that was before I left, and this was a very strange lesson. Matter of fact, when I told one of the psychologists in the program when I was in the PhD program, I said, well, listen, I had this happen to me once, and later I found out, he goes, hey, he talked to one of the other ones behind my back and said, hey, I suspect this guy might be schizoaffective. All right. So what happened there was this was before the voices came out and said, you have no right. It was like 6th or 7th year I was at the prison, and I was seeing all these anomalies. I knew these voices were not hallucinations, but I did not know what they were. I just knew they weren't hallucinations. There was a pattern to them. There was an intent to them. They were always getting the schizophrenics in trouble when they listened to them. So one night I prayed. I said, Lord, show me what these things are. Show me what they are. And it was a couple of weeks later. And what I would do is I lived on a lake then, and would commute to the hospital. Milledgeville at that time was in the middle of nowhere. So I'd go swimming at night in the lake in the summer, and there were motorboats. There weren't too many motorboats, and I was a good swimmer. I was a scuba diver. I loved the water. I was like a fish in the water. I'd had all this survival training with the water. I had a lot of time underwater diving. Temple University required you to take an entire year, one semester of skin diving and then another semester of scuba diving, and it was much more intense training than they provide today. It took a whole year. So I went out to the lake one day, and I was swimming. It was like after dark or right about sunset, and the water was bath warm, just bath warm. The surface of the lake was just glass smooth. So went in, and I started swimming. I was in much better shape then, and I just got my stroke going, and it was like meditation. I just concentrated on the stroke. I balanced out how much air I was using with how much energy I was using, and hit a nice balance where I wasn't really pushing things. And I was cutting through the water at a pretty good clip, but wasn't really. And just kind of, it was like a meditative practice, just each stroke, just, paying attention. And then I started feeling tired. So I went, well, I wonder where I am. And I come up and I look around, and I'm way far out. And it's after dark now. And I wasn't worried about it at all. I couldn't make it back to the shore because I was way too tired. But they have what they taught me was a rescue, was a survival float. So you kind of put your hands behind your back, clasp them, and then you're just floating like a dead man. Your legs are dragging behind, your face is underwater, your hands are behind your back, and you're just kind of floating with your face down. Then you bring your head up, you blow out the lungful of air you had before. As soon as you do that, you start sinking, and then you have to pull your head back and suck in another breath before your head disappears underwater. So you sink down a foot or two, and then holding your breath, you float back up, and you come back into the dead man pose again. You just hold your breath there until you're uncomfortable, and then you just repeat the thing. You could do that for days if you needed to, if you didn't freeze to death first. Requires very little energy, and you can rest up. So, that's what I would. When I was looking around, here comes this thought barging into my head, and it says, "You're too far out to make it back to shore." Yeah. You're too tired. Yeah. And the lights are going out on the shore, and you're going to get disoriented. You're not going to be able to see where the shore is. I went, well, yeah, okay, lights are going out. Yeah. And you're going to drown. I'm like, I'm going to what? That didn't come from me. I wasn't the least bit worried about it. He's picking on the wrong person. You're going to drown. And I'm thinking about this, and it was a yes set. So here's whatever this thing was. It asked me this. It's saying these things. You're too far out. That's yeah. That's true. You're too tired to make it to shore. Yeah, that's true. The lights are going out on the shore. That's true. So here's yes. And you're going to drown. No, no, I'm not. Yeah. But I'm going, this thing had a yes set. Here's a yes set that's being used against me. I recognized it instantly. I said, am I using a yes set against myself to drown myself? No, this has got to be something else. So I'm like, well, what the hell was that? And so after that, one time while I was sinking down, I let out the air and I'm sinking down. I was going, I'd pop back up again, but I'm going down, and it goes the same things again, and then it goes, you're heading for the bottom. You're going to drown, And I'm like, well, yeah, I was heading for the bottom. I'm like, what the hell is this thing? So I came up, took the breath again, and this time, to spite it, I just let more air out. Okay, so this is after dark now. The water's bath warm. I sink down, and then instead of bobbing up to the surface as I normally would, I let some air out, and I started sinking more. And cleared my ears, and then sunk down until I felt this cold. I mean, just this cold on my well, first it was a rapid sink. So once you hit a certain depth, your lungs collapse because of the water pressure, and you sink faster. You know, it's like you're no longer buoyant because the air no longer displaces the water. The water pressure, and all of a sudden I felt myself go like, and then whoa, and I'm like, whoa, that's a little bit too fast, you know, considering whatever the devil was going on here. So I went back up to the surface, and it, you know, looked around, and it goes, see, you're panicking, you're going to drown. And I'm like, what? You were on the way to the bottom, you're panicking, you're going to drown. And I'm like, what the hell is this thing? So went down again, you know, sunk down, cleared the ears, expected the thing. It wasn't anything I hadn't experienced before. It was just that this is such a weird situation that it was like, okay, I know what that is already. You know, there's nothing to be afraid of there. Then I hit the thermocline. So this cold layer of cold water starts coming up my feet and up my legs, and I'm like, whoa, you know, and I wasn't expecting that because thermoclines are usually on the bottom. They're cold water and they're heavier and they sink. So I hit that, and I shot back up to the surface again. Even before I broke surface, I knew what it was. I said, well, that's just the thermocline. So I hit the surface. Here it comes again. You know, you're panicking. The lights are going out. You're not going to be able to find the shore. You know, you're going to drown. And I'm like, I'm going to what? Yeah. So, so I went down again. And this time went through the thermocline, and there was warm water under the thermocline, which I wasn't expecting at all. You know, once you hit that, all my experience with thermoclines is they sit on the bottom. This one hadn't reached the bottom yet. So I go through it, and then I feel this thing sucking at my feet, and it's like, ooh, it's shot back to the surface again. Even before I got up, I'm like, I hit the bottom. You know, and I had to clear my ears several times, so it must have been down 25, 30 feet maybe, which is crazy if you look at it. So I felt this. I shot to the surface, and here it comes again. See, you're panicking. You're gonna, you know, and there's a motorboat coming. And I'm like, I hadn't noticed a motorboat. You know, when you're underwater, you can hear sound for a long way away. And maybe I wasn't paying attention because I was more concerned, like, what the hell's going on here? And what's going to happen? Is this thing going to grab me underwater or what? But what was strange, it shut up. Once I went below the surface, it didn't keep prattling. So it wouldn't follow me underwater. It was just only on the surface. I found that strange. So I got up, and it says, you know, repeats all this crap again. And then it goes, and there's a motorboat coming right for you. And it's going to grind you to pieces because they can't see you out here in the middle of the lake at night. And I look, and off in the distance, here's this motorboat coming toward me with these green navigation lights moving right at me. And I'm like, okay, you know, I've dodged motorboats before. I've had to hug the bottom. I can go back down and stay there until after it's gone. I wasn't really concerned about it. I didn't like that situation, you know, but I could deal with it. And it says, that thing's good. He can't see you. You're going to get hit by this, and the propeller is going to cut you into a million pieces, you know, which was a definite possibility. You know, so I'm like, how did this thing know a motorboat was coming when I couldn't hear it? And I'm watching it, and this thing's getting closer and closer and closer. And it passes by like maybe 20, 25 feet in front of me. And I'm watching it go by, and I wasn't paying attention to the wake that it had kicked up. I'm just kind of like, you know, watching it goes, well, okay, thank God that's out of the way. And I'm taking in a breath, and the wake washes over me as I'm taking a breath in. So I took a mouthful of water in, and I'm like, you know, just spitting it out and coughing and see, you're going to drown. You're panicking. You're going to drown. You're drowning right now. And I'm like, what the hell is this thing? So I went, you know, screw you. And I went down again. And I sunk all the way down to the bottom, my feet stuck into the mud, and I wasn't expecting mud because the shore was all rock. So I thought that all the lake was rock. I wasn't expecting muck at the bottom, but it was this oozy muck. Right? So hit that, and then just kind of folded over, and I was like a dead man. I was like a dead guy when my arms were hanging down maybe a few inches above the bottom. The water was bath warm. There was no sight. There was no sound. There was no feeling. There was no thought, because I was kind of afraid that something was going to come out of the dark at the bottom of the lake and grab me. So I'm like, kind of, all right, what's next? What's next? And for the 20 or 30 seconds that I could hold my breath, I had no body. I couldn't see. I couldn't hear. I couldn't smell. All sensations were cut off. And the only thing that was there was that I was aware that I was aware. And that's what's there past all this input. That's what's there. That's what is watching the thoughts. When you step back and you go watch your thoughts, that's what's watching them. That awareness that is you. You are not your thoughts. And you can stand in that position and you can watch these thoughts come into your head, and you can track them, and you can see the nature of them, and you can evaluate them if you can take that step back. And you sit there and you go, well, okay, I've been thinking about this thing that's in the future. It may happen, it might not happen, but you just spent 2 minutes thinking about this crap, and it's not even real. It doesn't even exist. It may never happen. Or you go back into the past and you go, oh man, that was a horrible thing, and and it's a big repetitious circle. If you can't break free of that, you need to, like you said, leave space for something else to enter. Oh, I'm getting a message here that my internet connection is unstable. So
let's find this side.
People need to leave space for this kind of information to come in, but most of them cannot. Like my friend I told you, he thought he would die if his thinking stopped for any period of time.
How did you get out of that situation, Jerry? Did somebody rescue you, or what happened?
Oh, hell no. I didn't need anybody to rescue me. I just rested up and swam the shore. My mind was blown. It was like, what surprised me the most is that voice sounded exactly like the millions of thoughts that go through my head every day. There was no difference. The difference was the intent. It sounded just like me. But I knew I would not tell myself those things, nor was I worried about the things that it was telling me that I was worried about, nor did I have any fear that I was going to drown. None. Even though I was at the bottom of the lake, I wasn't afraid that I was going to drown. But 2 weeks later, somebody drowned in that lake in that same area. And I wonder to this day whether whatever that was that got me got them. They probably didn't have as much training as I did in the water. So it was real clear that voice was not mine, that was something that entered my mind, and I had prayed to see what this was, and this is what I'd been shown. And what shocked me is it sounded just like me. And that's what they want you to think, that their thoughts are your thoughts, that you are them. And I've had a number of patients ask them, who are you? What are you? And they would say, we are you.
Oh, interesting. We are you. Interesting.
We are you. And that's what it said. Carlos Castaneda, at one point, he would hint about this all the way through his writings. And then one day he told Carlos, he said, on the Don Juan to Carlos, he said, they give you their mind, but they have access to your memory. They can go in there and they can access all your memories and pull up every rotten thing you've ever done and rub it in your face until they generate that negative emotional energy that they feed off of. Eating source. Look at